This recording will be a description of how to add resources to OTIS and how to use those resources in a list. When you go to your My OTIS page, you have the choices to add a file, add a website, and create a list. The difference between those is that files and websites are resources, and lists is how you organize those resources. So, for example, down here I have two tabs, the Resources tab and the Lists tab. In the Resources tab, that shows me all the resources that I have put in OTIS. In the Lists tab, it shows me all the lists that I have created. You first want to upload resources so that you can then put them in lists. If you create a list but you don't have any resources in OTIS, you can't put anything in it. So let me just show you one of my lists. Suppose we look at the Math 163 Pre-Calculus Instructor Materials. Here, this is my view of the list. You can see that we have the title of course, and course the description, and then here are the things that I have put in this particular list. These are the resources that I have added to the list. It's mostly PDF files of homework solutions, but there's an Excel file and a Word document. And these resources I generally share with faculty who are going to be teaching this course for the first time. So I would simply provide the faculty member with the URL here for this list. So let's say you could delete the list if you want to, but I don't want to delete that list. If you want to add something to a list, one of your existing resources, well, let's add a resource first. So let's suppose we want to add a file. You can pick any file you want from your, let's suppose I pick this Chapter 1 notes from my pre-calculus course. And it tells you the types of files you can upload here. You can see the file list. You want to give the resource a name, and this would be, let's say, Pre-Calculus Chapter 1 notes. And then you give it a description down here, and I'm just going to, you could give it a long description, and I'm just going to give it the same description as the title, just for purposes of this recording. And then you come and you give it some tags. So it's pre-calculus, so pre-calculus is Math 163, and also it's called pre-calculus, and those are the only tags that would be appropriate to this particular resource at this time. But maybe I want to say, you know, what would be nice is if I had a tag that said notes, because then I could share the notes using that same tag. So I would submit this, then I would close this window, and so there's my new resource. It conveniently shows up at the top, and that's the Chapter 1 notes, but you can see there that the only two tags we have are pre-calculus and Math 163. And as I said, I wanted to create a notes tag. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to go here to the Tag Manager, and I'm going to add a new tag. Now, I have to caution you, make sure that you look at the tags that already exist. I know there's not a notes tag because I was just in the screen and it didn't give me that option, but just make sure you're not duplicating a tag. I'm just going to look down here. They're alphabetical. No, they're not alphabetical. But I'm going to create a tag called notes. And I submit. So now, if you look down here, there's a notes tag. So if we go back to our resource, we can edit the resource, and now we can add the notes tag. And that adds a new tag, which is notes. Now, I have some lists already created. And so here I have pre-calculus instructor materials. So let's suppose I wanted to add that resource to this pre-calculus instructor materials list. I would simply come over here where it says Save to List, and I have there all of my lists identified for me. And I want to add that to the 163 list. So we'll just add that to the 163 list. And it says the resource was added to your list. Now, let's suppose I needed a new list called Pre-Calculus Notes. Well, then I would create that list, and I would call it, say, Pre-Calculus Notes. And the list description, again, I'm just going to use the same one. You can make the description as complicated as you would like. And then you close the Create List window. That was here at the top, Create a List. So now, when I try to save this to a list, I have a new list down here called Pre-Calculus Notes. And so I can save it to that list. And it gives me a little dialog box that says the page was added, the resource was added to your list. Now, if I come over here to Pre-Calculus Notes, you will notice that when you first publish when you first create a list, it is private down here. The published status is private. And if you want to change that, because you want people to be able to see your list, you can change it to shared. And now people can look at this list if you give them this URL. And you can put that URL in Blackboard on your web page. You can email it to everybody. And so if I come over here and I look at that link, I have the Chapter 1 notes, and it's just a PDF file which it downloads and you can open down here. Now, let's suppose you've decided you don't want that resource to be shared. You can change it from shared to private, because maybe you want to add something to the list, you're taking something off, you didn't like the way the list looked. Now, if you refresh this page, the page is empty. The URL still works, but there's nothing there because all of the items are private now. And just as quickly, we can come back to shared, and we come over here, and the resource shows up again. So those are lists and resources. You upload your resources. You use those resources to add them to a list, and then you share the list URL with your students or whoever you want to share the list URL with. Now, if your list is long, I'm going to delete this list because I don't really want it. Let's suppose I come here to my Math 163 Pre-Calculus Instructor Materials, and I want these notes that I put in there, I want them to be at the top. I can just grab the box and move those notes all the way up here to the top of the list. And I just have reordered my list. Suppose you don't want it, you can delete the list item, and that'll just remove it entirely. So you can add or remove items from your lists very, very, very quickly. If you don't want this Pre-Calculus Chapter 1 notes, very easy to delete it. You just click on delete. Oh, reason for the deletion is don't need. So the resource was deleted. you can add a website just as easily as you can add a file, and you can also add that to your list. And that's how you add resources and create lists, and then add resources to lists in OTIS.